Alright, let's get this show on the road. For those who are new to the channel, my name is Ilya and I am the Dark Lord of Optics. Self-proclaimed, but I didn't really come up with it myself. Today's video is going to be fairly brief. It is not so much a review as a first look at an interesting scope, at least it's an interesting scope for me. It is a scope from a company called USO, called FDN17x. It goes up to 17 power. It's officially, it is 3.2 to 17, I believe, or something like that. Where is that thing? Products. FDN stands for Foundation Series, and it is, yes, 3.2 to 17 with a 50mm objective. I have a few other scopes here, basically for size comparison. I'll tell you what they are in a moment. First, I'll give you a little bit of a background. So I don't know all of the background here. I'm trying to get some more information, but here is what I know. USO has been around for quite a long time, for many years. It was located in Brea, just in Orange County, just south of Los Angeles, part of Greater Los Angeles. A lot of what they did over the years was sort of basically custom builds. They had a few different designs, they had a million options. You could go and configure it, and you'd get your scope with different types of parallax, different color, different magnification ranges, different objective sizes. They've made a few attempts over the years to standardize them and go a little bit more mass market, go through regular sales channels, and I think they had very limited success with that. Eventually, the company was sold, I think it was a couple of years ago, and they announced that they're moving to Montana. Right? If you do anything with guns, getting out of California is a good thing. And so I talked to these guys at SHOT. I don't really know anybody at USO. So I swing by, they tell me a story. We are now in Montana, and they start making things in Montana. And then next thing I know, the company is in North Carolina. And I think it is owned by the same person who owns Zero Delta, which is mounts and tripods and that kind of stuff. And they also do contract machining. It's a pretty good size operation in North Carolina. And it is in the US. I've always kind of had a little bit of a soft spot for USO because I like it when people try to make this kind of stuff in the United States. Although I heard multiple rumors that the erector tubes for USO scopes traditionally came from Japan, from Light Optics Works. So if you ask me how much of each of these scopes is truly made in US, how much isn't, I haven't the foggiest idea. I simply do not know. But they are clearly assembled here. A lot of materials are made here. I think machining is done here. So they are at least as American as Leupold, maybe more so. I don't know if they're quite as US made as, let's say, Vortex AMG, but I'll take it. I've looked at a few USO scopes over the years, and overall I like them. There are some strengths, some weaknesses, but one of the things that always gave me pause was that when I looked at a reasonable number of them, there was a lot of variation in optical quality and image quality from sample to sample. So much so that I basically stopped looking at them. For a guy like me, and I go and look at scopes partially because I'm curious, but partially because I want to be able to make good recommendations. So for me, if when I test a scope, I do not have much confidence that a second scope is going to perform the same way, I will stop looking at that brand. That is one of the many reasons I stopped looking at IR Valdada. So IR scopes. I was originally one of the big proponents, but then the market kind of caught up and passed them. They've done some other designs. Aside from some other issues, primarily with the IR's US importer, I also stopped looking at them because there was so much variance that I could not, even if I liked the scope that I had, I could not in good faith recommend it to anyone because I had no confidence in it. And that is almost more or less sort of what happened with US Optics. But now that the company has gone through transitions, I think somebody bought it, somebody consulted, there was a lawsuit, so they pulled it out of Montana, moved it to North Carolina, and now things are stabilizing. They made some design changes, and they're making scopes again. I'm now starting with US Optics, essentially looking at it as a new company, kind of clean slate. In this period of 2 years, there was a good number of people who were complaining about delivery dates and quality and a variety of other things. I have not done any sort of extensive research into that, but given all the changes that are happening, have been happening with the company, I'm basically inclined to give them the benefit of the doubt and just say, okay, clean slate, we are starting over. US Optics has two product lines, the FDN, called Foundation Series, and TS. So TS series scopes are made in China and they do QC in the US and North Carolina. I haven't looked at those scopes yet. I'm planning to look at one of them. They have a very nice compact SPR-ish scope that I'm planning to look at together with one of the red dots. But the scope I have in my hands now is this Foundation Series scope, which is presumably US made. I've spent a little time now looking at it. I haven't shot with it yet, so this is indeed the first look. But I figured I'll share my initial observations and I'll try to make some update videos as I go along. My intention is to spend a lot of time with this scope and really put it through its paces, because if I'm treating this as a new company, I kind of have to do that, right? Or any scope that is truly new design that I look at, I make it a point to not make conclusions until I've spent quite a lot of time with it. And there are new companies and new products. Some here, for example, this is a Leica PRS scope. That's the second one I've looked at. This one is with a different reticle. The reason I got a second one to look at is that it is a new design. I want to look at more than one sample. I want to spend some time with it. Element Optics Nexus, 5-20x50, same business. So, it's made by Light Optics Works, so it's not quite new, but it's a new company, it's a new model for me, so I'm spending a lot of time with it. I want to make sure that when I do make a recommendation, I've looked at the product carefully. So, I'm looking at US Optics FDN17x. Initial impressions, it's not a short scope, but in terms of length, it's not bad. Here is a tangent theta 3-15x50. Well, it's with the caps. US Optics is slightly longer, but it's it's within reason. The trend today is for very short scopes, and on one hand I support it, on the other hand it brings in some design complications. So unless I'm planning to run it with a clip-on or something, I don't mind a longer design. Doesn't bother me too much, as long as everything works. If you look at this carefully, I don't know if you can see it, you'll notice that the finish on the objective lens assembly and on the tube is slightly different. Different types of anodizing or something, or different batches. And it looks like there is a seam here. So this appears to be a multi-piece tube. This is one piece, center is another. Well, an eyepiece is always different. I can already hear the howls of frustration. Oh my God, multi-piece tube. I know people have made a big deal out of that in the past. I'm not quite convinced I understand why. You can make a joint like this. I don't know how it is inside, I haven't taken it apart, right? But you can make this kind of a joint to be extremely strong, arguably stronger than just steel, right? If there's a long threaded insert in there and you add some good epoxy some industrial strength adhesive in it, this joint might be stronger than just metal. I don't know. It's effectively kind of like why people do laminates and all that. So it doesn't have to be, but it can be. So if it's done right, the whole multi-piece tube business does not bother me in the slightest. Okay. The elevation turret is an evolution of the original US Optics ERAK turret, EREK, now called something else. Now it's called ER3K. I assume that implies that it is a third generation of this turret. I don't know. I took it apart, I looked at it. Setting the zero stop is definitely easier than an original ERAK, so I'm good with that. In terms of the form factor and the feel, I really like this turret. It's not very tall, but it's quite wide, so it's easy to grasp. The click spacing is quite good. The clicks are, I'll put it next to this thing. The clicks are somewhat muffled in terms of sound, but the feel is very nice. And once again, when I do my standard test, I just close my eyes and go through some clicks and try to count them, going a little quicker, a little slower. I have not missed a click, so it's not bad. Granted, I have a lot of experience with different turrets, so I generally don't miss clicks very much. But this is one of the better designs I've seen for a while. The windage turret is covered, but it's still tall and finger adjustable, also with rather nice clicks. They are muted in terms of sound, but the feel is quite nice. I like these kind of very thunky stuff. There's no slop, anything like that. On this one, I am slightly mixed. If you look at this, you'll see that it's a pretty good sized turret. I like the fact that it's capped. That I like. I don't adjust windage very much, but given a reasonable amount of space, I probably would have preferred for this windage turret to be more compact. I think that is. I think that makes. That would probably be easier for me. As is, I don't think it will interfere with anything, but on some guns, maybe brass coming up will bang against it. But, if that starts happening, I'll just put a piece of electrical tape on the turret cover and I'll be fine. But, something a little bit more low profile would be more up my alley. On the other side here is the parallax. Parallax goes down to, I think, 50 yards. And, I'll blast the spec table on eventually. What is also integrated here is their digital illumination. So the illumination is basically just a button. It starts very, very low. The light levels are calibrated quite nicely. And as I don't know if you can hear it. As you keep clicking, it gets brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter. And then the brightest level is actually reasonably bright. Not day bright, doesn't need to be. The whole reticle is illuminated. It works. I don't like the clicky stuff too much. I prefer rotary controls. But this does have an advantage, is when you grab the side turret, the only rotary thing you have happening there is the parallax, right? Everything else is just a push button. If you press and hold, it turns off. But one of the things I don't like is that the sound is audible, and you always start at low level. I have to click a bunch of times to get to the level I want. My preferred way of doing a turret is to have a rotary control, so I can have it on a setting and I can turn it on and off. To go that here, there's no real indication what setting you're on. You just keep clicking until it gets bright enough for your use. But if you overshot it and you want to go low, you want to go to lower illumination level, you have to keep clicking until it goes through a full cycle. I think maybe I'll check in the manual, make sure that's the right way, that I'm understanding this the right way. But that's the way I'm understanding this. So that is not my favorite thing. Another thing that I found slightly odd. So to replace the battery, this whole illumination business comes out. I will show you. Okay. So here, I don't know if you can see it, there are two electrode connections that connect to the illumination module here. Here's where the battery is, and there are two little connectors here? Well, this whole thing can kind of rotate, right? So there is an illumination module inside, and outside there's a sleeve that can rotate around it. When you replace a battery, and when you are inserting this thing, these two little contacts have to make contact. There are two locating pins on the side, but they're kind of short. Okay, so here's the illumination module that I pulled out. These two little locating pins are on the short side, and because there I go. So now I found the locating pins, right? But the electrodes are spring-loaded, so I have to get it and to put it back in. Have to get it into the right spot. Hold it down with my one finger. Make sure the electrodes don't shift, because if they don't shift, illumination is not going to work. And then screw this back in. So I don't know. So it works. You know, took me a couple of tries. Yeah, it works. If you hold it, if you press and hold, it will turn on. So it took me a couple of tries, but I figured out how it works. It's not too bad, but I would prefer longer locating pins. And honestly, they already have this rotary thing here. Why not just make some mods and make it change magnification, change illumination, something like that. So in terms of controls and feel, I mean, the one thing I don't really like is the way they did illumination. It does work, but it's not my favorite. The other change compared to the original EOS optics scopes is that the eyepiece travel is much shorter. It used to, you spin it almost like 270 degrees. Now it is about 180 degree rotation. The effort and all the controls is really nicely worked out. Everything is smooth, parallax is smooth, magnification ring is smooth, the feel of the elevation turret is very nice. So, as I said, overall my impressions are positive. Even the illumination control that I'm not crazy about, but it works. It didn't take me very long to figure out how to use it. Didn't take me very long to figure out how to replace the battery. So it works nicely. Now, optics. I haven't done a full study yet. I haven't done low light yet, but I've been staring at it and looking at it and comparing it a little bit side by side. And initially, I am kind of cautiously optimistic. If you look at the eyepiece, you see it kind of tapers a little bit like Hensoldt did their eyepiece. And on magnifications above about 5, thereabouts, the black ring around the eyepiece is quite small. It's pretty easy to get behind, and the eyepiece doesn't fully disappear, but there is very little black ring, right? So getting behind the eyepiece is easy, and the black ring mostly disappears. There is tunneling on low magnification. Technically it goes down to 3.2, but when you are at 3.2, you can actually see the border around the reticle cell, and you can see a larger black ring. There's so low magnification tunneling that a lot of scopes used to have, not so many now. As you ramp up magnification, you stop seeing all this stuff just before 5, so probably about 4.5, 4.7. So in terms of having the full field of view, it's really a 4.7 to 17 power scope. Does it bother me? I don't like it very much, but I'll live. What I do like is that the field of view above 4.7 power is very wide. I think it's one of the widest I've seen to date. I think it's even on the same magnification slightly wider than the Tangent, which is a very, very wide field of view scope. And I think the only recent high quality scopes that I've seen that have wider field of view are the new March scopes for the wide angle eyepiece. I'll need to calculate what the apparent field of view of this guy is, but it's probably in the ballpark of 24 degrees, probably 23.5, 24 degrees. I'll calculate it exactly and I'll post it in the table. Contrast is good, resolution is good. I'm not seeing any sort of major CA issues. The reticle in this is the JVCR or something. So Jake Wittberg, the guy who won Paris, I think once or twice, he's a well-known competitive shooter. He shoots for US Optics, and that's his design. It's overall I like it quite a bit. So I have a lot of experience with the Gen 2XR reticle. That's within this tangent theta, which is kind of a sparse type of a tree that's very unobtrusive, and you have the tree to use when you really need it, and you don't when you don't. So the JVCR, is it JVCR, JVPR, what is the name of this reticle? Yeah, I don't know, somewhere in there, I'll post it. So the JVCR reticle is sort of the further evolution of that gives you horizontal lines every 2 milliradian and dots in between it every 1 milliradian. You've got some 0.2 holes. Now that the whole reticle looks a little bit bolder than many other modern designs are, which I like. I am not big on super thin reticles, but there is a floating dot in the center, and that is small. So it's kind of a good combination of a lot of different things. The reticles I've designed lately were a little bit different, but this is very workable and better than most. Given a choice in a true reticle, I would rather have less than more, right? So I've made some comparatively complicated reticles and some fairly simple ones. Ultimately, less crap in a reticle, as long as you have what you need, is better. This may be a little bit less than what I like, but it's very workable, and like I said, better than most. So I'm cautiously optimistic about the scope and the reticle so far. The optical quality looks decent. I like the elevation turret. Size and weight are reasonable. It's 29.6 ounces, so it's just a hair under 30 ounces. So it's kind of almost like a crossover design. I'm probably going to do most of the testing on an accurate semi-auto. And I'm looking to shoot out a lot of my 6.5 Grendel ammo before I switch to 6 ARC. And I've been testing a low power variable on it. I think I'll put this scope on the Grendel and go spend a lot of time shooting. It's reasonably long at 15 inches, but still, if you're not running a clip-on, it is a nice option for a bolt gun or for an accurate semi-auto, which is where I am going to try using it. Anyhow, so that's that. That's my first look at US Optics FDN17x. If you have any questions, please post in the comments. If there's anything specific that I missed that I should have talked about, please let me know and I'll fill in the blanks. And as I test this scope, I'll be posting updates. Please subscribe, click on this little bell so you get my notifications, and whatever updates I make will be in your inbox. Thank you for watching. Really appreciate your time.